Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm deeply grateful to be here with Anele Heiges from the IPPI. She'll explain. And we are going to hear this morning about the spiritual history of the United Nations. Anele, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Great privilege and glad to be here with this great group of people. The IP stands for International Public Policy Institute. And the reason I'm part of RUN is because from the beginning, I was in that little upper room with 6 people many years ago, just sitting around trying to organize ourselves, and I just stayed on. So the spiritual history of the United Nations, excuse me, is very important. And there's a key phrase that I want to mention, and that is that above all, we humans are meaning-making creatures of our life and world. And this is key to remember, and to remember that meaning-making is spiritual, a spiritual part of the spirituality. Very briefly, our history is that as the Second World War was ending, people wanted to call it a war that would end all wars. And that's what people really wanted. And so in order to do that, they knew they couldn't make the mistake of the First World War, which waited till everything was over before they tried to get the League of Nations going. The apparatus to act together as a world group had to be already in place before the war ended. Therefore, when Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister in England and Charles de Gaulle was in charge in France, and Franklin Roosevelt, our dear crippled president, was the President of the United States, they all agreed to this meeting in San Francisco to make meaning and forge ongoing world peace. And this was to begin before the armistice even happened. Well, the NGO and the civilians, if you will, heard about this and they thought, oh, no, we cannot have another top-down world meeting. And you'll be happy to know that the leaders of people's groups crashed into the party. They showed up in the hotel in San Francisco where the meeting was taking place. They met everybody in the halls. They insisted on being part of it. And so they got to sit in the back, and the whole charter for the United Nations as it was being written showed there's a place in here that talks about the participation as appropriate with citizens groups. It's in here. And thanks to those people that crashed the party, so to speak, and they were really, really gutsy. Pretty soon, the religious leaders saw that spirituality had to be part of what happened. And spirituality, again, meaning meaning-making and not just pulpit preaching or that kind of thing. The whole evolution of what spiritual meant was in the words here. And soon the religious NGOs were formed and began to interact with ambassadors. And right away they knew they had to learn what was going on, learn the sections of the UN. The religious NGOs were very, very good at organizing, and they knew that they couldn't talk holy all the time, that they had to understand meaning making, and that the jobs of the governments were to govern. And they were really good at that. Wasn't long before religious orders caught on, that as an order, like all of you are, representing your religious organizations, that they could become NGOs and be part of the meaning making too. And so it began early on that religious orders joined in now as NGOs. Now here's the thing, after a little while, there were officials in the UN that started to get nervous about that because the religious orders were proliferating in number, and they knew that they were a secular body, a government body, so to speak, and they didn't want all this holiness overrunning them, which you can see there were stereotypes about what religious orders were doing. And religious orders had stereotypes about themselves too. We too have changed. And here's a small anecdote. I've been here since the very, very beginning when a few of us got together in an upper room. And back then, I was teamed up to teach with a Wan Buddhist woman. And one day, we were sitting in the General Assembly, meditating with eyes closed about world peace. And we looked up when a man's voice asked, "What are you doing?" He wasn't used to non-diplomats sitting in the General Assembly yet. And we answered, the ambassador of Turkey, that's who it was standing in front of us. He said, "Well, sir, we're praying for you. We care very much about this world body and each ambassador in it. So the General Assembly Hall is empty now, sir. So we're praying for you." And he lit up like a light bulb and he said, "Oh my goodness, thank you. We need you here so much." He said, "Sometimes we don't know what we're doing either." And so he was so honest, but he really set us on the path to believing in what we were doing too. And he was good. We soon learned that it was a good thing as an NGO with a religious team or any team we were working with to gain an expertise that we got better into the spiritual growth, the understanding of meaning making, and we're called upon much more readily if we were an expert at something. So we didn't all try to cover the sandlot, but get really good at what you were good at and agree with your team what your part could be. And then you can have a place and a voice much, much better. Through the materials given out by what is now called the Department of Global Communications, they love to interact. Also, when the coronavirus is over, visit them and offer yourself for service to be on one of their committees, because they meet with many, many, many topics, various committees. You can't do it all. You do the part that you're good at. And they often convene meetings through the Department of Global Communication with the Secretary General of the United Nations. And you can often get in to be a part of that. I invite you to Google the Martin Luther King speech on the World House. The World House is the name of it. And it's all about the United Nations. And it is beautiful. It is just really wonderful. And you'll pick up a lot of juice in that essay by Martin Luther King. I guess I'm telling you that there's a lot of help for you here, but don't try as one person to run all over the place like a chicken with your head cut off and cover the waterfront. You'll just be scattered. Get good at something in the spiritual scheme of things. And I did want to say something, Beth, about what the World Watch Institute report states. Quote, "Today we confront a challenge to innovate for life on a deeper level than we have ever known, and have one or perhaps two generations only left in which to do this. Clearly, we're at a shape-shifting moment in history." So I say that as an encouragement, maybe a little challenge too, to all of us here. Thank you, Beth, for having me, and thank you, everyone, for being here and sharing with us. Let us help you. Ask us for help, anything we can do.
Well, thanks to Anele for that wonderful wisdom. A few little wonderful tidbits there.